Yashodanandana Vrajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanchari Yamuna Tira Yashodanandana Vrajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vrajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira
We'll continue our introductory course to the Srimad Bhagavatam. So the last week we started by discussing the purposes or the aims of the study of the Bhagavatam. And then we spent a few weeks about going over the 10 topics discussed, the 10 main topics discussed in the Bhagavatam. And today we will discuss the history of the Bhagavatam according to the Srimad Bhagavatam itself. And that will last for 5 sessions. This section is based on the 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th chapter of the first canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And that, because in the 4th chapter, Sonaka Rishi, it's one of the sages, or one of the great sages present in Namisaranya, and he's asking Sutta Goswami about the Bhagavatam's history. And that, therefore, Sutta Goswami, he explains the background of Vyasadeva, Srila Vyasadev's compiling the Bhagavatam. And this story starts with Srila Vyasadeva expressing feelings of despondency, and Narada will respond to that in the 5th chapter in an amazing way. This will lead to to Srila Vyasadev's meditation on the personal feature of the Absolute Truth, and from this vision, the whole Bhagavatam emanates. And also it includes Narada Muni's presentation of his previous life, which is a very powerful demonstration of bhakti, of the power of bhakti. So we will start this session today by reading a verse from the 4th chapter of the 1st canto, text 31. So if you have an iPod or you have the Bhagavatam in book form, it's verse 1431. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Kim va Bhagavata Dharma.
Kim va Bhagavata Dharma.
Na prayena nirupita.
Na prayena nirupita.
Priya Paramahamsanam.
Priya Paramahamsanam.
Taifyachyuta Priyaha.
Taivayachyuta Priya.
Kim va Bhagavata Dharma.
Kim va Bhagavata Dharma.
Na prayena nirupita.
Na prayena nirupita.
Priya Paramahamsanam.
Priya Paramahamsanam.
Taifyachyuta Priya.
Taivayachyuta Priya.
Kim va Bhagavata Dharma.
Kim va Bhagavata Dharma.
Na prayena nirupita.
Na prayena nirupita.
Priya Paramahamsanam.
Priya Paramahamsanam.
Taivayachyuta Priya.
Taivayachyuta Priya.
And once repeat.
Kim va Bhagavata Dharma.
Kim va Bhagavata Dharma.
Na prayena nirupita.
Na prayena nirupita.
Priya Paramahamsanam.
Priya Paramahamsanam.
Ta eva yachutta priya.
Taivayachyuta Priya.
Kim va Bhagavata Dharma.
Kim va Bhagavata Dharma.
Na prayena nirupita.
Na prayena nirupita.
Priya Paramamsanam.
Priya Paramahamsanam.
Ta eva hi achyuta priya.
Taivayachyuta Priya.
Vaishnavi.
Kim va Bhagavata Dharma.
Kim va Bhagavata Dharma.
Na prayena nirupitaha.
Na prayena nirupita.
Priya Paramahamsanam.
Priya Paramahamsanam.
Ta eva hi achyuta priyaha.
Taivayachyuta Priya.
Kim va Bhagavata Dharma.
Bhagavata Dharma.
Devotional activities.
Devotional activities.
Devotional activities of living beings.
Na. Not. Prayena.
Prayena.
Almost. Nirupita. Directed. Priya. Dear. Paramahamsanam. Of the perfect beings. Te eva. That also. he, certainly,
Achyuta,
the infallible, Priya, attractive. Translation and purport by Abhayacharana Vinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki. This may be because I did not specifically point out the devotional service of the Lord, which is dear both to the perfect beings and the infallible Lord. Purport. The dissatisfaction which has been felt by Srila Vyasadeva is expressed herein in his own words. This was felt for the normal condition of the living entity in the devotional service of the Lord. Unless one is fixed in the normal condition of service, neither the Lord nor the living being can become fully satisfied. This defect was felt by him when Narada Muni, his spiritual master, reached him. It is described as follows. Om Ajnanatimrandasya Chansana Slakaya Saksharam Militam Yena Tasmai Shigurave Namah Chaitanyamanokstam Staptam Yena Bhutale Samrupkadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shiyu Shiyuda Padakamanam Shiyum Vaishnavam Shah Shirupam Jagatsatatam Sagana Ragnatam Pitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sabrutam Parjana Saitam Sri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sakanalita Shri Shakam Vitam Shah He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dino Bandhu Jatpate Gopisha Gopika Kantara Namastate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavanashri Vishabhamsa Devi Pranamaya Haripriya Panta Kalpa Visha Kripasan Vayavisha Vatanam Bhavanamyo Vaishnavyo Namo Namo Jai Shri Krishna
Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda
Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaura Bhakta
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Vastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Charashanti Namne Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Vastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namne Namaste Saraswati Devi Gaurvani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paskatyani Visatani. So we have here a picture of Srila Vyasadeva in the Himalayas, in his ashram, and he had compiled the 4 Vedas, all the Puranas. It's a big work, all the Puranas. There are 18 major Puranas, Puranas in the different modes. We have, of course, this will lead to the writing of the compilation of the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the Bhagavad Purana, 18,000 verses. But some of these Puranas are really big, like the Skanda Purana, 160,000 verses. It was a huge work, and then the Itihasas, the histories, like the epics, the Ramayana, and the Mahabharata, such a big work. But after done this huge, or having performed this huge task, then so much service, then finally Srila Vyasadeva felt despondent, felt morose, and he was meditating on the cause. Why I'm feeling like that? And then in this verse, he expresses what could be the reason. He said, maybe I did not describe the pastimes of Lord Krishna, or not sufficient. But then something extraordinary happens. suddenly we have Narada Muni, spiritual master, appearing there. And I say it's extraordinary. It's extraordinary because there's a problem with the recording. The broadcasting stopped. My computer is shutting down. Can you broadcast?
I can't broadcast.
No. No problem. But something very extraordinary happened here, because Narada Muni appeared, and it seems there is no exchange between Narada Muni and Srila Vyasadeva. That there is no inquiry on how are you or whatever, and no introduction. Just a spiritual master appears. Of course, Srila Vyasadeva offers obeisances, but then Narada Muni immediately addresses the reason for Srila Vyasadeva's feelings of despondency. That it's like someone, you have a problem and someone appears and immediately gives you the solution. He points out what's happening and gives you advice without asking that. So, of course, we know that the spiritual master is an external manifestation of the super soul. There's a cooperation between the spiritual master and the super soul. So, if we please the spiritual master, then and the spiritual master is pleased, then Krishna in the heart will give us godly realizations of the spiritual knowledge. That's called divine revelation through the heart, but that happens by the mercy of pleasing the spiritual master. And that. So, of course, this brings up a very important question. So, every living entity is mentioned in the Vedic literatures. It's Anandamaya Vyasat. It wants happiness. It wants great satisfaction. So, what is the cause of real satisfaction in our life? What is the cause of dissatisfaction? And that's an important question, answered here in the small purport of this verse. There we have it's mentioned that the quote, Srila Prabhupada uses the words, the normal condition of service. So that seems to be our normal condition to serve. And that, because the Bhagavatam is just about explaining how we can come to that normal condition of service. And that's called Bhagavad Dharma or Sanatana Dharma, which is the main subject of the Bhagavatam. So it's going directly to the essence. Yeah. So in text 32, then it's mentioned that, as mentioned before, it is said, Narada reached the cottage of Krishna Dvaipayan Vyas on the banks of the Sarasvati, just as Vyasadeva was regretting his defects. That, now the purport. the vacuum felt by Vyasadeva was not due to his lack of knowledge. Bhagavad Dharma is purely devotional service of the Lord, in which the monist has no access. The monist is not counted among the Paramahamsas, the most perfect of the renounced order of life. Srimad Bhagavatam is full of narrations of transcendental activities of the personality of Godhead. Although Vyasadeva was an empowered divinity, he still felt dissatisfied because in none of his works were the transcendental activities of the Lord properly explained. Inspiration was infused by Sri Krishna directly in the heart of Vyasadeva, and thus he felt a vacuum as explained above. It is definitely expressed that herewith that without the transcendental loving service of the Lord everything is void. But in the transcendental service of the Lord everything is tangible, without any separate attempt at fruitive work or empiric philosophical speculation. So there is here this link between becoming absorbed in Krishna consciousness in devotional service and happiness, and the absence of that means that the mind is absorbed in sense gratification in one way or another, and that's the cause of dissatisfaction. So even if we win the lottery or we become very wealthy or get great success, that does not mean by this achievement you have achieved inner happiness. That you can have on the highway, you look, people driving in a big Rolls Royce and with the family, but that does not mean that inside they have happy relationships and they are feeling happy. That mostly the Rolls Royce is not the cause of their happiness. And so the Srimad Bhagavatam is a further study of the knowledge of Bhagavad Gita. It teaches us how to bring this in practice. And in these verses here we have important lessons. But let us go to Bhagavad Gita and see what Krishna says about happiness and satisfaction and dissatisfaction. I will read a few verses of the second chapter of the Gita, the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. It's like the index table or the contents of the topics explored further in the Gita. Like verse 44 says, Bhogasvaya prashaktanam taya pritashetasham vyavsat mikabudir samadana vidiyat. The mind of those who are too attached to sense enjoyment and material opulence and are bewildered by such things, the resolute determination for devotional service to the Supreme Lord does not take place. So this means from the moment the mind is absorbed in things related to this body or identification with body and mind, then yes, one becomes bewildered by such things and one loses one interest in performing devotional service. Of course, that is exactly what Narada Muni a little further is pointing out. So he appears before Srila Vyasadeva and immediately addresses his reason for his despondency. So your spiritual master appears and immediately starts to chastise you. And that's what's happening here. It says, text 152, addressing Vyasadeva, the son of Parasar, Narada inquired, "Are you satisfied by identifying with the body or the mind as objects of self-realization?" That's the purport. This was a hint by Narada to Vyasadeva regarding the cause of his despondency. Vyasadeva was the descendant of Parasar, the great powerful sage, had the privilege of having a great parentage which should not have given Vyasadeva cause for despondency. Being a great son of a great father, he should not have identified the self with the body or the mind. Ordinary man with a poor fund of knowledge can identify the body as self or the mind as self, but Vyasadeva should not have done so. One cannot be cheerful by nature unless one is factly seated in self-realization, which is transcendental to the material body and the mind. So here, the cause is identified of this dissatisfaction, is identification with the body and the mind. When one is situated in one's natural position as a servant of the Lord, from that moment, one forgets about the body and the mind. That one becomes absorbed in selfless service to the Supreme Lord, and that's the cause of happiness. That from the moment one forgets Krishna, means sense gratification, a cause of suffering. And that we see in this age what's the condition of the people. It's described in the first chapter of the first canto, verse 10. Payanalpayusa sabya kala pasmin jurechana mandasamanamatayo mandabhagi upaduta. Man in this life, in this age of Kali, they are always unlucky, not satisfied. They have a short life. They are lazy, and above all, always disturbed by so many anxieties. And anxieties, they come. The source of anxiety is the identification with the body and the mind. And that's pointed out here by Narada Muni. He said, you have compiled all this Vedic literature. So one can say, did Srila Vyasadeva do the wrong thing? That he's supposed to be an incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Sakti Avesavadana? Not really. Because why are we here in this material world? Because that we explained during the 10 topics, because of utti, desire to enjoy. That's why we are here. And Krishna is in the heart. He's so kind. He comes with us to the material world. He never has been separated from us. The fact that we forget Krishna is just illusion, because he's always with us. He never left us, but he's in our heart. And he served our desire. He wants us to fulfill this desire, yes? You want to enjoy? Good. Go to the material world, and we'll give you the experience of enjoyment, to be the enjoyer. unfortunately you are not an enjoyer, so I have to bring you in illusion so that you can have the experience of being the supreme enjoyer. That. So he makes arrangements for that. And Srila, of course, like Srila Prabhupada, he explained once, you get a tape recorder. At least before it was like that. You buy a tape recorder and you get a manual, user manual, and it's explained how to use that. In the same way, Srila Vyasadeva compiled all this Vedic literature to explain how to enjoy in this world in a religious way and get some satisfaction from the enjoyment by doing it in a religious way. Because the religious way means a connection with Krishna, some way or another. Whatever activity is connected with Krishna, to the intensity of its connection, it will give happiness, inner satisfaction to the soul. That's an important teaching of the Bhagavatam. Yayatma Shubhashidati. It teaches which gives satisfaction to the soul. And that's Savaipam Saparodamo Yato Bhaktirodoksari. Hait Kapatiyata Yatma Shubhashidati. Only this unalloyed devotional service gives satisfaction to the soul. So therefore, he compiled all these literatures to satisfy those who are interested in Karma Kanda, in Jnana Kanda, Upasana Kanda, which are all forms of which are there to fulfill material desires. The Jnana Kanda, the Jnani wants liberation, which is material desire. That the Karmi want to enjoy the fruits. Upasana Kanda, worship of demigods, want to go to the heavenly planets. So many material desires. And he described all this. But real satisfaction does not come from trying to satisfy material desires. No. If one tries to satisfy material desires, one gets the opposite. Ye samsvarsya bhoga dukayona evate atyantavante kanteya nati shuramate buddha. The wise man has concluded that engagement in sense gratification, it's the source of misery. And it's temporary. It's like it's there for some moment. I think it was Roma Harsha Rishi. He had got the benediction to live as long as there are hairs on his body. And every life of Brahma, one hair would fall out. And he had hair all over his body, like here. But then one of his disciples, because he was chanting at the Ganga, he was sitting in the sun, and his disciples said that, yes, we will build for you a bhajan kutir, then you are out of the sun. So he was living so many lives of Brahma. He said to his disciples, don't waste your time with that. It's all temporary. So that means realization, that even if you have such a long life, it's all temporary. It has no meaning. But people run after this temporary sense gratification of this body, the gross body, which we have just for a short time. The gross bodies we get for a short lifetime, but the subtle body, our subtle body is very old. it's zillions of years old. That it's the cause of us taking birth and getting growth bodies is that we surcharge this subtle body with these desires to enjoy growth bodies. And that makes us take birth again and again and again in such a, with such an intensity and regularity. And Srila Vyasadeva has compiled all this Vedic literature, but that will not help people to get out of their position of dissatisfaction. That it is this real satisfaction comes from Krishna consciousness. This is explained also in Bhagavad Gita in so many ways. Like here, the cause of entanglement in the material energy. Dayato visyapam san, sangha stes vajayate, sangha sanyate kama kam koda vijayate, koda bhavati sama sama smiti vibra, smita brimsban budunyaso, budnas panashati. So, if one tries to enjoy sense objects, then attachment develops. From attachment, then one creates in the mind expectations. This object is going to give me pleasure, or this relationship will give me some pleasure. I want good relationships, means relationships that will give pleasure. That's the same thing. That's because it creates false expectations. This material object of this body of this person will give me satisfaction. It will give me satisfaction, will give me happiness. But it's not possible. Bhagavad Gita says you just get the opposite. For sure. That's, we will see further in Bhagavad Gita. It's clearly explained. You just get the opposite. So we create false expectations. So many things in our lives that we make plans to fulfill these expectations. But they never come true. And if they then are not coming true, we become angry. Angry, and when one is full of anger, one just sees the moment, and his memory vanquishes, and he falls down in the pool of material existence. Therefore, Krishna says, don't do that. Don't go in all these things. And this is what Srila Vyasadeva in some sense described to help people to fulfill their material desires. And all right, that's why they are here. So Krishna gives them also a chance. You want, you try. And we are trying for many, many lifetimes, again and again, but it does not give satisfaction to the soul. No way to become happy. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Ragatvesh vamuktastu vishyam indriyascharanat vavasevdeyatma prasadamadigatchati. A person who becomes free from attachment and aversion. Because that's what this strive for material happiness, for sense gratification causes. We think, and it's born of that illusion. But this is going to give me pleasure, and this is bad for me. Attachment, aversion. That it creates enemies and friends. So The same in relationship. Relationships go wrong. Relationship goes wrong, and your best friend becomes your greatest enemy. It happens so many times. We see it. But a person free from attachment and aversion. How can you become free from attachment and aversion? By control of the senses, it is said, and follow the regulative principles of freedom. The regulative principles of freedom means practicing this our natural situation of service towards the Supreme Lord. So interesting is that you want to get pleasure from something material, and you get this dissatisfaction. From the moment you say, I don't want these things anymore, I want just to live for the pleasure of others, and for Krishna, and his devotees, and his part and parcels. And you start just to give, I give away. I want to serve others and give pleasure. Then you get satisfaction. Because this is a spiritual law. What you try to give away, you get. That on the spiritual platform. Material platform, you try to give something away, and you lose it altogether. So therefore, Pasyada sarvadukanam anirasya pachayate parnaso sitasoya su buddhir parya pratisthite. For when thus satisfied in Krishna consciousness, the threefold miseries of existence exist no longer. In such satisfied consciousness. So Prabhupada translated as satisfied consciousness. No hankering, no lamentation anymore. You become peaceful. Then one's intelligence is soon well established. You've seen many devotees, because from the moment you take up Krishna consciousness, Krishna arranges for your purification. You are not an ordinary person anymore. It's going to work on you intensively. And then a devotee has still material desires. Still he strives to get so many things. And sometimes that takes subtle forms. And you try to get satisfaction from and to realize so many projects and things, but mostly nothing works out. Nothing. But by that frustration, you come to the point, yes, that's not where I would seek happiness. And you learn to depend on the circumstances. Krishna creates the circumstances according to your karma, according to other factors for the spreading of Krishna consciousness. And I heard Prahlad Nanda Maharaj, yes, my main Shiksha Guru, he would many times say, we are servants of the circumstances. Circumstances are created, and we accept these circumstances created by Krishna. And whatever good or bad happens is all right. And then happiness comes in the heart. That satisfaction. Because if we don't do that, then Krishna says in text 66, Nasti buddha yuktasya nasa yuktasya bhavana nasa bhavayata santir asantasya kutasukam. One who is not connected with the Supreme can have neither transcendental intelligence nor a steady mind. Without there is no possibility of peace, and how can there be any happiness without peace? So the conditioned soul in this world tries to get rid of that feeling of dissatisfaction or emptiness like people these days they have this, don't know how many channels they can access to the television through now it has no limit. And people are going from one channel to another, another, and always changing channels. And at the end, they don't see anything, but they don't feel satisfied with what they are seeing, because it's always the same thing. The Bhagavatam says, "Puna puna sauta sauta." It's always showing the truth, always the same thing, and that a film with a hero and then there is always a romantic part, and it's Rome and Julia, and I'm Tarzan, and this is Jane, I'm Jane. And that it's the same story always. It doesn't give satisfaction, it's emptiness. So the only thing that can fill up that emptiness is to be established in our relationship with Krishna. Look through the world to that relationship, taking shelter of Krishna. Because no other activity can replace this sense of completeness which one is experienced by connecting with Krishna. Nothing can really satisfy the soul than this engagement in devotional service. Because from the moment you forget Krishna, from that moment, dissatisfaction appears. Then there is no way out. We try to get satisfaction of trying to exploit his body, but it doesn't work. Therefore, Vyasadeva, when Narada Muni appears, Narada Muni appeared before Srila Vyasadeva, and Narada Muni smiled, and he starts with asking this question: are you satisfied with identifying with the body and the mind as an object of self-realization? We see that the Bhagavatam, like in 1 to 8, it starts with pointing out these essential points, that the occupational activities a man performs according to his own position are so much useless labor if they do not provoke attraction for the message of the personality of Godhead. So just going to Varnashram and doing our duty will not help really. Of course, Krishna says, Karmani vatakaраste, mafaleshna karjana. Do your duty and don't attach to the result. That will help us to become peaceful, for sure. Because you act out of duty, not out of plan making to give the body happiness and that. But that may bring you finally to the point of practically Brahman realization, that one stops making plans and stop lamenting. But then that's absence of misery. But one has to go beyond that. Real satisfaction comes from this engagement in devotional service. And who is the object of devotional service, the sum and bonum? It's Krishna. He is the Bhagavatasraya. So without Krishna, knowing Krishna, we cannot engage in devotional service. You have to know Krishna and who Krishna is. If you don't know who Krishna is, then you cannot really engage in devotional service. We have seen that, like even the 4 Kumaras. They were Brahmavadis. They were recognizing that Krishna is a transcendental body, but they considered Brahman higher than Krishna. That, yeah. And then you remain in Brahman realization. You cannot go beyond that with that conception. It was by their good fortune to come to the gates of Vaikuntha, and unfortunately cursed Jai and Vijay, that then Lord Narayan appears, and they see Lord Narayan, and then by smelling the tulsi leaves which was offered to the lotus feet of Lord Narayan, their mind changed, and they understood Lord Narayan is superior to Brahman. So Brahman is not sufficient to get that satisfaction. That's all the higher pleasures. Therefore, they said even those who attain Brahman realization, they are Avisuddha Buddhaya. Their intelligence is impure because they have not a complete understanding of Krishna. Mayavadis, that's another category. They are thinking Krishna's body is Maya. So by that, the reality is they stay in Maya. They cannot come out. Their Brahman realization is just an idea. It's because even if one attains Brahman realization, then there is absence of misery, but there is no activity. And the natural situation of the soul is to get this activity. So after a few millions of years being situated in the Brahmajyoti, it becomes very boring there. And then one comes down again to the material platform. But it's a natural situation of the spirit soul to have that satisfaction. In the beginning of our movement, the devotees, when they performed many times dramas. And there was the drama of the fish who was on the land. And he could not be happy on the land. A fish is only happy when it's in the water. So we are out of the spiritual atmosphere of the Vaikuntha planets. We are in this material prison, and we can never be happy here in this material consciousness. We have to change our consciousness by connecting with Krishna, and therefore that will be the advice of Narada Muni. You have to describe the Supreme Personality of Godhead. You have to write a Bhagavatam. That was his advice. So Srila Prabhupada, in the purport, it's a little further, 155, so here, Srila Vyasadeva responds here to the advice or to the question of his spiritual master. And he said, all you have said about me is perfectly correct. Despite all of this, I'm not pacified. I therefore question you about the root cause of my dissatisfaction. For you are a man of unlimited knowledge, due to your being the offspring of one Brahma who is self-born. Purport. In the material world, everyone is engrossed with the idea of identifying the body and the mind with the self. As such, all knowledge disseminated in the material world is related either with the body or with the mind, or it is the cause of all despondencies. This is not always detected, even though one may be the greatest erudite scholar in materialistic knowledge. It is good, therefore, to approach a person like Narada to solve the root cause of despondency. Why should Narada be approached? It's explained below. So interesting is all knowledge, Srila Prabhupada said, disseminated in this material world. It's related to the body or the mind. And that's the cause of our dissatisfaction. Now, to solve that, we need knowledge which is not related to the body and the mind, but to the soul. And that's the Srimad Bhagavatam, which will be compiled by Srila Vyasadeva after having some experiences which are further on explained, that we will discuss next time. That, so if there are any questions, yes, Rubish.
Question about duality. It's described that the material world is a perverted reflection of the spiritual world, and with reference to verses in the Bhagavad Gita, like for instance, chapter 7, where Lord Krishna says, "O Sayana-Bharata, O conqueror of the foe, all living entities are born into delusion, bewildered by dualities from desire and hate." And then Srila Prabhupada comments that this is them. He says, "This is their misfortune. Such deluded persons symptomatically dwell in dualities of dishonor and honor, misery and happiness, woman and man, good and bad, pleasure and pain. Is that those who are so deluded by dualities are completely foolish and therefore cannot understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead." But the question is there dualities in the spiritual world, and if so, what is the difference?
Mm-hmm. The dualities arise in our mind and intelligence, subtle body, that due to Pritach, Prishta, Trishti, Pritach Trishta, due to a separatist mentality. That is what Prahlad Maharaj explains, that because he did not like the teachings of Sunda and Amarka, who were teaching us how to rule and divide and how to treat enemies and friends in different ways. So he did not like this idea of friends and enemies, of good and bad, and that's the advice. Therefore, that's why why Krishna in Bhagavad Gita is stressing a lot of qualities which are showing that, or which are realizations of freedom from these dualities. Because these dualities, they are a concoction of the mind, which are produced by absorption in the material energy. Because that's one of the questions of Arjuna to Krishna. He said, such a transcendentalist, how does he walk? How does he speak? So he's asking what are the characteristics of such of such a transcendentalist. And this is in the second chapter. It's 55, yeah. Says, Prayati yata kama sarvam parta manugatam atmani vatmana tushta stita pahyas tatuchyate. when a man gives up all varieties of desire for sense gratification, because that desire for sense gratification is the cause of being absorbed in dualities. And these dualities, Krishna says, they arise from, or coming from material desires. They are a mental concoction. We think something is good for our body and something is bad. That, like I explained that before, you have a mosquito and it comes on. And what do? We don't like it. Because we think that's our enemy. It's going to sting me and it's bad for me. So the mosquito is my enemy. I don't like it. But what's the reality? The poor creature wants food, and his food happens to be your blood. That's all. The mosquito does not think I will be the enemy, and that. No, it just wants to eat. That's all. But we think, yes, that's. And if we see something beautiful. People see a pussycat and want to touch it. That's good for the touch, good for my body. That for the cat mostly doesn't care. But anyway, this is the absorption in duality, and Krishna says, it's mental concoction. But a transcendentalist, his mind is purified. He feels satisfaction in the sense alone. Because he knows I'm not his body. Why should I be considered with this body? You have people who like to eat. First time I went to America, I was amazed. These were people with such bodies. I've never seen them before. But they like to eat. But they are not a body. They think that's good for the body. I'm strong, that's good. It's all mental concoction. It's deep illusion, because I think I'm this or that. But the problem is that once one goes in that duality, one gets deeper and deeper, and the illusion comes deeper and deeper, and the suffering becomes more intense, and one cannot get out of anymore. It's that. So that's this duality. If you have the 15th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, verse 5, Krishna describes there a liberated person, that nirmamama sita sangha dosa atyatma nitya vinivritta kama tantve vimukta sukha dukkha samya gacchanta muda padanapyantat. Those who are free from false prestige, illusion and false association, who understand the internal, who are done with material lust, who are freed from dualities of happiness and distress, and who, unbewildered, know how to surrender unto the Supreme Person, attain to that eternal kingdom. Here, happiness from freedom, freedom from happiness and distress. Because that's the first lesson in Bhagavad Gita. Krishna says, Matras Pastikantya Situsna Sukadukada Agamapaina Nityastam Stikshas Vavagata. Just tolerate this happiness and distress. It's going together with the body. There's nothing to do with you, you just tolerate that. Because Krishna then gives in the 12th chapter a whole list of qualities that are endearing to him, and it's all related to that, to becoming free from these dualities. One who is not envious, but who is a kind friend to all living entities. If you are envious to someone else, means, oh, this person has something and which he can enjoy, and I'm feeling sorry because I cannot enjoy it. So I also want it. So, and that's envy. That's based on the idea I'm the body and the mind, because it's the body and the mind that enjoy or enjoys, not you. You are not the enjoyer, you are the observer. But by identifying with it, you think I'm enjoying. It's such a deep illusion. And the Bhagavatam, hearing the Bhagavatam daily is the way to come gradually out of this illusion. That's what the Bhagavatam does. So powerful. Anyway, yeah, maybe last.
Yeah, it's just a follow up. Wouldn't you say that the opposite in the spiritual world to the perverted reflection of dualities is that there is dualities, but in connection with Krishna, like where everyone's like Mother Yashoda is chasing in anxiety for Krishna, or the gopis are in anxiety but it's still to please Krishna.
Yeah, so
isn't that the opposite?
The duality arises from the moment we get Krishna out of the picture. That's called duality. But in the spiritual world, everything is we connect everything with Krishna, and then Krishna's interest and our interest are the same. There is no duality. That's the meaning in that concept. Yeah. So there is no separate mentality. So duality arises in the mind and is just a misconception, misunderstanding. Okay.
I want to ask you, this situation of Lilasuka, where he is despondent, can that be compared to Arjuna's situation in Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna is engaging him to teach us? Or did Lilasuka, he's the son of Parasara Muni, he's written all the scriptures. Why would he feel like that? Is he feeling like that? Is he feeling that in sympathy to the situation of living entities in normal self?
There's a vast difference in some sense, because Vyasadeva, he was not in a mode of ignorance or in a mode of passion. He was a self-realized person that this was certainly Krishna's arrangement. But he had described this Brahman conception and all this Karma Kanda, Jnana Kanda, and so on. And it did not give him satisfaction. But it does not mean he felt his stress. That's also another thing. It is not that he felt a form of distress. He was in some sense lamenting, but not like the ordinary people who are distressed because they have engaged in activities of passion or ignorance. That I think Arjuna, his situation was, it was a pure devotee, but Krishna wanted to speak Bhagavad Gita and brought him in this situation of identifying with the body. And he was really situated in the mode of passion, Arjuna. Passion means, the understanding in passion is that you see others as their body and not as a spirit soul. So he saw different designations that were going with the body. He was speaking about his teachers, his grandfather, that all the Kshatriyas, all his family members with whom he wanted to enjoy. It's a mode of passion. So there is a difference in that sense that I can understand that Srila Vyasadeva, he was not influenced really by the amount of passion. That he was in goodness, but goodness does not give full satisfaction. It gives a sense of happiness. Satisfaction comes when we connect with Krishna. So they were in that sense on a different platform, but the cause of dissatisfaction was the same, and that's the understanding of bringing Krishna into the picture, that connecting Krishna with their activities. That was the advice of Krishna of Krishna to Arjuna to perform yoga and to connect with Krishna. And here we see the same advice by Srila Vyasadeva, by Narada Muni to Srila Vyasadeva, but on a different platform. It's not the same platform, but it's the same principle at the same time. Because Srila Vyasadeva, he had at least Brahman realization that Arjuna was not on that. This is certainly a difference. Anyway, I hope this helps a bit to understand it. Thank you. Okay, yes.
Does Krishna know if we're ever going to go back to the spiritual world? As in, like we have desires, and then he's put us into this material world to try to fulfill the desires.
Yeah.
But does he have a plan, like, as in what next? As in, are we going to actually go back to him, or is it that we're going to get frustrated and then we'll take to spiritual life?
In Samo Sarvabhute, so Krishna is equal to everyone. So it does not. It's equal to everyone. But if someone becomes his devotee, he becomes partial. And from that moment, he has a plan for this devotee one. This person wants to become, this soul wants to become my devotee again. He makes a plan to purify him, and he intervenes with his karma, and he gives him situations so that he can make spiritual advancement. Then he takes care of his devotee, bringing him back to the spiritual world. So Krishna, he has certainly a plan to bring us all back to the spiritual world, but he does not intervene with our independence, our desire. He reciprocates with our desire. If we change our desire and we say, Krishna, from now on I'm yours, then Krishna will take action. And then the first thing he does is, Lord Chaitanya says, Brahmana Brahmite Konya Bhakyavan Shive Guru Krishna Prasade Kone Bhakti Lata Bridge. So, if one is fortunate and goes up and down in the universe, then he becomes Bhakyavan, fortunate. He meets a devotee. It is by the mercy of Krishna in the heart that one meets a guru, and it's by the mercy of the guru who plants the seed of devotion service in the heart of the devotee that one gets Krishna. It's a beautiful cooperation, but Krishna is behind that cooperation, and that starts to work at that moment, from the moment you desire to go back to God. So Krishna wants all of us girls to go back to God. If we would just be for a second be aware how much Krishna loves us, we are not anymore in this material world. Thank you very much. Prabhu Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
His Grace Lilasuka Prabhu
Ki jai.